Hello, motorcycle enthusiasts. This is a 2002 Yamaha V-Star 650 Classic. Uh, just got back from a little ride, and I had a thought. I recently had to change the stator on my bike, and I found plenty of videos, very helpful videos on there that had all the, you know, once you actually got down into it, all the technical info, all that kind of stuff, a lot of good hints and tips. But I couldn't find any videos that told me simply how to get started, at least for this bike. So I just wanted to throw something out there just real quick. I'm not going to tear it apart because it was a pain in the butt to do it, and I'm not going to do it again unless I have to. But I will tell you what, just a real quick what you need to do. Maybe that'll help somebody out there. First thing you want to do is drain the oil. You are going to need a stand, but you don't have to go spend $150 on a jack stand. You don't have to raise it up to do this. It would be easier, especially on your back, sitting on a stool rather than lying on the concrete of your garage or whatever. But you can just get some 2x4s, get somebody to hold it while you measure it from the bottom of the frame. It's squared off. It's not like a Harley. It doesn't have that stupid middle bar in the middle that requires a special stand. You can just get a generic universal jack stand and it'll work on one of these bikes. But I just got some 2x4s, measured it, and just used my lawnmower jack to raise it up. Didn't even pull the tire off the ground, just lifted it off the suspension about an inch just so I could slide the stand under there, let it off, and it stayed fine, perfectly balanced. I did put some bricks like chocks on the front and the back wheels, just as a safety or a secondary level of safety for it maybe, but it stayed up fine. Took me about 2 weeks, just working on the weekends and a lot of trial and error, because other than changing the air filter and some spark plugs and putting gas in it, I've never done any kind of motorcycle maintenance whatsoever. I read the book, Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance, and although it was a good book, I found shockingly little actual information I could use on a V-Star. Anyway, to get started, you'll want to begin by taking off the passenger seat, then remove the driver's seat, the gas tank. Now you can just disconnect the speedo from that end down there, and just lift the tank up and move it without actually disconnecting the cables and the wires. But I was afraid the tank would get knocked off and get dinged up, so I just went ahead and fully removed it. It's a little bit of a pain to get that speedo cable screwed back on when you put it back in if you've got big meaty hands, but just get somebody with small hands to do it for you. That's the easiest. But once you've got the tank off of there, you don't have to remove this false cover right here. There's nothing back there, just your drive shaft and tranny and stuff. But I went ahead and took it off. Like I said, this is a 21-year-old bike, so I went ahead and took it off and cleaned out all the road gunk and grime and stuff like that, and just took about 5 pounds of mud and stuff out from up underneath it, because my buddy Dom once made me go riding across country with these things, believe it or not. But if you do or do not do that, there's a lot of these bolts are just for show. The top two and the bottom two are all that matter, and they are different lengths, so pay attention there. The crescent cover, you'll need to take that off, and behind that is your neutral switch cover. I went ahead and replaced mine while I was at it, because 21-year-old bike, and it's just a little silver dollar size piece of plastic, but it does wear out, and it is right there with a lot of heat on it. So I went ahead, and mine was still in pretty good shape, but it was beginning to warp a little bit, so I went ahead and changed that out. And when it comes to parts like that, only buy OEM. I've bought knockoff parts before when working on my car or a truck, but they don't always line up, and sometimes they're really flimsy quality. So just go ahead and spend 30 bucks on a little piece of plastic that cost a nickel, because you know it's reliable. Then finally you'll get here to the crankcase cover. Now, special note on that, every single bolt is a different length. So on your gasket, the cover for your gasket that you're going to have to put back on there when you replace all this, go ahead and label them so you know what goes where, because like I said, every single one is a different length, and again, you could avoid a lot of trial and error if you just take a couple of minutes to label them. 50,000 miles, 21 years, everything inside mine looked real good. It was very pretty inside there, the actual crankshaft and everything. But this is the old stator. You can see it was in bad shape. I actually ruined a bike trip for a couple of buddies because on day one my battery died, and at first I thought, well, I didn't charge it over the winter and this is the first ride of the season. But then we got to the campsite and it wouldn't crank up to go out to eat that night, and then it wouldn't crank the next morning. Just every time the engine died, it wouldn't crank. But while it was running, it was fine. And we even tested it with a voltage meter, and we were getting about, I think if I remember correctly, it was 11 or 12 volts. It wasn't quite what it should be. You want it bouncing between 12 and 13. But we thought, you know, maybe it's just getting weak, but it didn't appear as though the stator was dead. But eventually what I decided to do was just replace the whole thing. You know, like I said, 21-year-old bike, if it's not bad now, it's going to be soon. So I replaced the stator and the voltage regulator, both at the same time. You can get kits, and you can go on Amazon and find them relatively cheaply, but again, that's your gamble if you want to buy knockoff parts. I don't recommend it, but you know, I understand finances being what they are for everybody. Sometimes you just have to do what you can. But anyway, the stator just sits on the inside of this. Now, because it was an old bike and they used aluminum nuts on stainless steel bolts, they had fused together, so that was a pain in the butt, and we actually ended up having to tap and dye new new bolts for it because they were so badly stripped. They just weren't, the old ones just weren't coming out. Like I said, old bike, and you made an alloy when you put those two pieces together. But so I've got standard bolts inside there. Everything else, of course, is metric. So that may make somebody flinch, I don't know. But anyway, we replaced the stator, and then you just work your way back, putting it all back together. Oh, I forgot to mention, when you remove the kickstand, you'll also have to remove the clutch cable, and you'll have to remove your gear shifter here, and just make sure when you do remove that, oh sorry, there it is, when you do remove that, make sure you put it back on in the same position it was when you took it off. So make a note of, you know, what position it's in when you do that. But put everything back together, and the voltage regulator is right there. It's just a plug and 2 bolts. That one's real quick and easy. But you replace that, and everything else, you know, I went ahead and replaced the battery just to give the entire electrical system a new start. So that's how you get started on a project like that. Hope that helps somebody out. Have a good one.